All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. Wow, we are here at season 3, episode 6, and I got a doozy for y'all today. I sound really old saying a doozy, but y'all bear with me. Just before we get started to anything, just thank you guys so much for all the support, all the love, the following, subscribing, sharing. I appreciate it all as I continue to grow this and build this. You guys are a necessary support and it does not go unfounded. I'm definitely grateful and appreciative. And I know the people I've had on that you guys poured it to are grateful as well. Without further ado, my name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent approximately over 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. Started advocating at 15. I've done that ever since now, and continue to do it. So I have a decade of child welfare experience. Well, technically both sides, being in it and being out of it. So yeah, I'm here to host this space and keep it going, but you guys aren't here for me, and I mean that in the most endearing way to myself. You guys are here for my guests that I have on today. Without further ado, I'm having them introduce themselves.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here. My name is Britney Lee, and my pronouns are they and she. I am also a child welfare consultant with lived expertise. I'm a storyteller, and I like to call myself a professional reformer and shifter of stagnant child welfare systems. I also spent quite a while, too long, in the foster care system, coming in at about 17 years and just above 18 homes. So same, if not a lifetime of expertise under my belt, at least 10 years of formal and informal child welfare experience since 17 years old when I started advocating.
Wow. Well, say that again. Too long. It be like that.
It should be a crime.
Man. Well, I'm really glad to have you on. I know you have a wealth of knowledge, and while we're on here today, we're going to conversate. We're going to talk about that. So, just getting into my first question to start our conversation. When did your story begin? And help us understand the timeline of events, circumstances, barriers, obstacles, whichever way you want to say, or however way you want to say it, to your now.
Yeah. So I entered the foster care system, and I like to preface that the beginning of my story started, of course, a long time ago, but in the preference of my parenthood, I like to say that it started with as a result of the war on drugs, which in Ronald Reagan's era put a lot of Black fathers into incarceration, put a lot of drugs in Black and brown communities, and a lot of guns. And so as a result of that, indirectly and directly, I entered foster care in 1996 at the age of 2 years old, to 2 teen parents, both Black youth out here in Tacoma, Hilltop area, up until South Seattle, the predominantly Black areas of Washington State, and historically the most underserved communities as well, which tend to go hand in hand. From 2 to 4, I entered with my only fully biological sibling, and from 2 to 4, and he was like 3 and 5, like to 3 and 5 for him, we were in 10 different homes, with a couple of failed adoptions that I don't remember because I was only 2 and 3 years old. Then we entered one home in which we stayed, and it was a transracial home, meaning that there was no parent that kind of reflected us and our culture and our melanin and our hair and whatnot. We stayed in that home for about 12 years under permanent guardianship, from 4 to 16 for me. So 5 to like 17 for my brother. That was our first time being separated when we exited that home. So I went into 6 more homes from my junior to senior year in high school, and my brother went into 1 more home and then aged out because he was already 17. But yeah, that's kind of like the quick gist of my story. I aged out at 18, signed out, but the last foster home that I was in was willing and able to give me the things, the tools that I needed to try to finish my senior year strong, because I didn't graduate on time with my peers. And they helped me enroll in my local community college, which was a great space and experience for me. And yeah, I signed back in at 19 and lived with them for a time until I was able to get my first apartment at 19. But yeah, that's like the gist of my experience with my
Yeah.
mother.
You've been through it, you know.
Yeah,
It has been a journey, you know. And if you
indeed.
don't mind, you know, I want to touch on a couple things you mentioned, just so um for the individuals who aren't, you know, within this field that may be listening,
Yeah,
can get a little bit of knowledge, you know. It's
for sure.
always, you know, trying to give that teaching moment. So you said one, that last speech you shared is that you signed out, you know,
Yeah.
and I know it's different and across the board in different states. Some states have what do you call it? For the lack of better words, for the more technical, like an aftercare, like, you know, you age out of the technical foster care and they have something to at least like 21 in some states for those youth to be in, which in my state it's called young adult voluntary foster care. So when
Okay.
you say you signed up, what did that look like for yourself? Like that, what was that process? And to the best of your ability, like what was there, like a follow through with the worker, you know, that you had at that time outside of your foster parent to kind of like provide you with, you know, like a social security card, a birth certificate, all these different adult documents that you may need for that next step?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. So yeah, out here in Washington, it's called extended foster care to 21,
Okay.
something like that. And my memory of that 18 to 19-year-old years, pretty blurry,
Mhm.
but I remember physically signing out of foster care at 18. My birthday was the summer after my senior year in July. And I
Mhm.
physically signed out. That's a little bit of a vague memory. But because I had stayed in contact with that very last foster home that I was in, that 17th home, I don't remember a formal process of moving back in. I
Mhm.
think it was just there was already love there. And so
Okay.
I was able to just hit them up and say, hey, like living with my best friend right now isn't the best fit. Because I was just living with my friend after 18 for a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, can I move back in? And it was just a yes automatically. And they came, and it's like really blurry, but I think they came and just got me, and I moved back in for a little bit until I was able to become independent. And they helped me get my first job and whatnot. But as far as those adulthood preparations, they were definitely very much lacking. My the last foster home that I lived with, their last name is the Dashells, so I can just start saying that. The Dashells, they definitely, like I said, helped me get my first job, helped me figure out what that first resume was looking like, helped me enroll in the community college, and as far as getting those high school papers transferred over to the college to get all that, the FAFSA. But as far as my social security card, um, and birth certificate and all that, I remember having to figure out how to do that on my own. Um,
Mhm.
going like finding the office in my city, taking the bus there, and just figuring out what I needed. I had to come back a couple times because I didn't know all that I needed to bring with
Yeah.
me. Um, and the same kind of process for like passports and other official documents as well.
Mhm.
So as far as like getting my first bank account, that was something the Dashells helped me with as well. So that was nice to have my mom go in and like help me get that first debit card and get that savings account set up. So that I could start getting paid. But yeah, there was a lot of things I had to do on my own. And one core memory that still to this day I speak on at events and things is just getting this packet in the mail when I turned 18. And it didn't come until I got my first apartment, unfortunately, because I was completely alone when I read it. And it was just this big packet, this really cold, poor summation of like everything that the state had documented about my 17-year chunk in foster, basically my entire childhood.
Mhm.
And that going forward was the only document I had after foster care too, that I could use as proof that I had been in foster care. So it was super traumatic getting that. And I learned, because I learned more that I had no idea about, as far as like ADHD medication dosages I was given at
Mhm.
8 years old and stuff like that, all these details that were just horrible. But it was the only thing I could use for FAFSA to get that FAFSA every year when I had to renew.
That
It was the
verification,
only,
yeah.
yes, it was the only official document I had. So I had to carry this horrible paper for years, like through my college years, to verify. But yeah.
Wow, wow. And you know, I asked that question because, you know, if I hadn't experienced it myself, I would be curious because, you know, in the world of foster care and all, you know, child welfare, you know, you hear this trending like people are just getting, you know, dropped out of the system, or, you know, people in the system and then there's nothing else or what have you. So, you know, I like to, when I have an opportunity, you know, as someone like yourself who shares like they signed out and then they also went into what your state calls extended care, you know, to shed some light on, you know, what does that look like? And it doesn't when some people are saying, so let me correct myself. Some people are meaning that they just got put out, you
Mm.
know, and I can't speak to their stories, but to some people I have experienced and heard of their stories that does happen. But how you explained it is you had a lot of support and resources through your previous foster parents. So my next question following that, um, was it just off of their own knowledge of doing fostering, or did they have support from that local state agency or office to support you?
Mm. Yeah. I would say it was just solely off of their own knowledge.
Mhm.
So they were also the most, for lack of better term, they were the most well-off foster family I'd ever lived with as well.
Mhm.
Um, they were pretty stable, two-parent household, which was also one of the first times I saw um, a really healthy example of a stable two-parent household as well.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of that, yeah, the job hunting, the college, they'd both gone to college, so they both had this kind of knowledge under their belt. And at the time, because we still laugh about it, like in a morbid way, I had a really terrible social worker. So
Mhm.
she wasn't really helpful to them. A lot of the support they gave me was off their own, like just life knowledge and just care for me, which I'm really lucky and grateful for. But yeah, certain things like they had to fight the social worker, not like verbally kind of like advocate, you know,
Mhm.
vehemently for me. Um, to get me that first apartment at 19. So getting into that there was an independent youth housing program through this program, Independent Living Skills. And that's how
Mhm.
I got my first apartment. This program set me up, first 3 months of rent paid, utility bills covered, and they kind of like wean you into paying your rent yourself. So it was
Mhm.
a really awesome program. teaching about budgeting, safe and healthy relationships, and safe and healthy like sexual relationships, like all these like kind of base adulthood things
Yeah.
that I'd never had like conversations about at all before. So that getting me into that program, they were like, why didn't we hear about this sooner? Like apparently you could have been benefiting from it like at 16, and we didn't hear about it until you were like 18, almost 19. So that at the very last second they were able to get me into that. They were kind of looking at the social worker like, why didn't you tell us this existed? But no, it was kind of a fight to get the support that they needed from the state. The rest just kind of came from, like I said, their own knowledge.
Okay, okay. I have two questions still in this area, of your story, and then I'm gonna navigate towards your expertise. But you gave me a lot there, so I just want to make sure I highlight and hit these points for these individuals that are listening. Yeah, I know I have groups of foster parents, so what you just said there, I know it can be monumental for some of the foster parents that listen, because a lot of them, who are new or, whether old, they understand, they're like, we got to learn to have these resources, on hand, because, unfortunately, in some cases, states are overwhelmed. So foster parents do fall behind on the line of things getting done from a caseworker. On the other hand, it just doesn't happen. The support isn't there, but that's part of trying to make the system better, so we don't burn out foster parents that are actually good and really genuine at heart and wanting to do this. You mentioned that you, for one, you will be considered, a BIPOC, youth, and caring. You were in a transracial foster home. I know there's so many different statistics and that shows disparities and all these different things, that be negative, but also, some that may be positive. What was your experience, and what kind of support did you receive, or did not receive, that would have been beneficial for you to know, whether than facing, if any, hard lessons as an adult?
Yeah. As far as like adulthood or just like cultural stuff and
Cultural.
yeah.
If you give me options, I'm gonna say both, but I'm gonna just say culture.
For sure. Yeah, I would say some of the struggles like culturally in foster care were definitely because my go-to, like looking back, is that 12-year chunk home where I was in that transracial home from 4 to 16, pretty formative years. It wasn't really there. Plus, there isn't a lot of states, if at all, that mandate, and even if it's mandated, it's not, I don't think it's updated. I don't think it's properly like, yeah, that mandate cultural competency and just that kind of identity, culture, and community kind of trainings. So in that 12-year foster home, which was like the most memorable, formable one, my foster dad was a white gentleman, and my foster mom, his wife, was a Filipino woman. And so unfortunately, there was a lot of anti-Blackness in that home, not like inherently because, but there just was. And like comments about my nose, my hair being too difficult, and my hair, especially as a Black assigned female at birth person, that's just like a rite of passage, apparently, that there's just going to be struggles. There's going to be tears around your hair and going to school and worrying about what it looks like. So it didn't make it any easier that there wasn't a lot of love for like being poured out into me about my skin and my hair. Yeah, I remember like throughout elementary school, they were teaching themselves like little things. Like this is like the gist of what I got was like they taught themselves how to do my hair So I do remember the girl, like Black girlhood experience of having the beads and the baubles and like, that like 90s, early 2000s styles. But after that, it was like from middle to high school, they just expected me to straighten my hair and learn how to do that myself. So just certain things like that. And I saw like the Filipino culture was definitely dominant in the household. So this is a blessing that I take away from it, because I just try to take blessings out of everything, like what was something that I gained. And I thought this was a beautiful part, that regardless, even though I'm not from the Philippines, I'm not Filipino, it was still really cool to see that culture dominant. So there was a culture like present, which was cool. Had a lot of Filipino food. I heard the language spoken in the home, or one of the dialects, and even got to go to the Philippines at one point when I was 9. So just like being in a non all white country for the first time at such a young age too is a core memory. And I'm really grateful that I got that opportunity, because a lot of people don't. But outside of that, it was like the anti-blackness of, don't stay in the sun too long, you're gonna get too dark. And all these comments that luckily I did not very much internalize at all. I never really hated myself, which was, I think to this day, I kind of attribute to me, and then also some ancestors in my ears, like, don't listen to that. So that was kind of my experience. And I don't think it was much different from my brother. They pretty much just kept his hair short, so they didn't have to do much with it either. But that's kind of a common, I think, Black boyhood thing as well. But yeah.
Definitely. And that's a perfect segue to my last question surrounding my first question. You were in care with your sibling, with your brother. And I know like everyone who has been in care with a sibling, has a different unique take, their relation has different unique quirks and different things like that, So how was that experience? And if you don't mind me asking, how has that experience, on top of how that experience was, affected your dynamic now?
Yeah. So being in that household for that chunk of time, which was pretty much all I remember, I have vague my earliest memories of I think the 2 prior foster homes before we got to that Filipino household, I'll say. And I remember it both being Black women, that like early memories, but that's a blur. But then so that because that one house was the longest chunk, I remember the most of that. And I would say in that household, it was a toxic household. And because of that toxicity, and also the gender norms being pushed off, kind of the boys and sons being favored and a little bit more coddled. I don't know how to put it best, but so I was often compared to my sibling a lot, and because he was the older brother too. So that just created an unhealthy dynamic of us feeling like we had to compete for our needs being met, our basic love and care and support being met. And that created a really poor dynamic between the two of us. Though I still remember moments where we would look out for each other, and there was some elements of closeness. But the household also just tried to separate us in general, for lack of wanting to do the parenting work of supervising us so that we could have a healthy relationship. And after being separated, I think because we were separated after being together our entire childhood at 16 and 17, luckily, because of McKinney-Vento, which is, I don't know if that's a federal act, but that kind of just kept us in the same school at least. So whenever I saw him in the hall after that, like in school, because he was a grade above me, like it was always hugs, it was always love. Like I think we got a lot closer after we were separated and out of that household. I hung out with him and found ways to see him as much as possible. And just in general, going forward after being removed from that 12-year-old household, we definitely got a lot closer. and just meeting birth family. I think it echoes like in our earliest childhood, like there was memories from this and that family member that said, you guys were always so close. So I think it's really beautiful that we were able to find that closeness back again when we were in our adulthood But yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
That, and just, soaking it all in, and that's awesome to hear, you guys are able to find that, but also that was a piece of your guys' story before you even knew it, so
Right.
that's so cool to see
Yeah.
that you guys had regained that connectivity and that closeness. I'm going to segue to my next question here.
Okay.
We're going to dive into your expertise,
Mhm.
and what does that look like? What does life look like for you now? What do you do? And also, feel free to share about, the different type of advocacy and passionate topics that you are surrounded around.
Yeah. So some of my earliest advocacy experience was with the Mockingbird Society, which is an organization out here in Washington. I'm not sure if it's regional, so if it's Pacific Northwest, or they may even be federal, but they gave me opportunities to go to my state capital, which is funny because this was one of the first times me speaking to senators. And just advocating for youth homelessness and foster youth. And yeah, so that was some of my earliest, and then some of my earliest jobs, and like up until recently have also just been working with youth, and through those jobs getting the trauma informed care trainings under my belt, the cultural competency trainings at TCC, Tacoma Community College, where I attended. Shout out. And I think one of the gateway experiences that really helped my network and helped me meet a lot of amazing other former foster youth voices, which then also helped me heal, was foster clubs and Casey Families Foundation's, the National Foster Care Youth and Alumni Policy Council. So getting to go to DC in like 2018 and just writing policy directly for stakeholders and senators, and just whoever was going to look at it to read, was really formative. And then just about that, like, just I love public speaking through that event. Like I learned that I get nervous, but I love public speaking. And I'm a writer. I've always loved words. I've always liked like poetry and stuff. So just policy writing and finding the best words to say exactly what I'm trying to advocate for is a really big passion of mine as well. So yeah, policy writing as well. And then on the flip side, just at one point at 18 or 19, I remember just Googling any child welfare affiliated organization out here in my county, at King County, where Seattle is, and Pierce County, where I was in foster care. And one got back to me, and just through them as well, through their campaigns, using my voice, they've used me for some campaign or some fundraiser almost every year since I was like 18. So having that relationship with the organization in my community has been empowering too. And they also helped me build my network and meeting amazing people, like judges, like the first Black male judge out here in Pierce County, and having lunch with like the mayor, and just different things like that has been awesome. And yeah, something that I've just been really passionate about is like youth in general. So working with youth experiencing homelessness with their families, that was one of the most powerful jobs and life-changing jobs that I've ever had. I was doing that for around 3 years, and just learning more about what a social emotional learning based and trauma sensitive based program looks like for young people. And then lastly, just through UW, University of Washington, where I got my bachelor's degree in ethnic, gender, and labor studies. So just learning more about race, gender, and class, which all intersect to create the systems that bring us into the foster care system in the first place, learning about capitalism and paternalism and white supremacy and how it's all tied into those race, gender, and class kind of categories of life and that society creates and builds upon. So I've just been really passionate about learning about the disproportionalities in child welfare systems and trying to come up with like solutions to dismantle it and abolish the system where needed. And yeah, so that's just something that I've been doing. And then through UW or University of Washington, they had this awesome program where you could just say like, hey, this conference over here is happening in this other state or part of the country, and they would fly you out, give you the lodging, like cover a considerable portion of like the travel costs to go out and go to those those conferences. So just getting to go to Baltimore at a conference that was all about trauma and the family systems, and then going to Wisconsin and Black women leadership conferences and stuff like that have been really formative. And I love conferences. So, and then just speaking at panels with other youth voices and just advocating as much as I can is a huge passion for sure. So those are some of the things I've done and am interested in for sure.
Nephew says, we not gonna minimize all that greatness you just said. And I just, one thing that stuck out to me as you were sharing all that you have done, all the different rooms you have placed yourself in, but also all the knowledge seeking. It's monumental to hear that, and as well as I know, not a lot of us, get to that place to go to college or colleges for them, but there is a lot of us that do place ourselves in the rooms like you and myself, go to these things, want to go to conferences, do these trainings and different things like that, that brings elevation to the term, lived experience expert, and I just, as I hear that, I'm just thinking of like you could be teaching a college class without all the college that you have had, because of where you've been, what you've done, how you've put yourself in these different rooms to make sure that you knew what you were talking about, but not only knew what you were talking about, it wasn't just based off of your own experience. Now you have the know-how on top of that, which adds so much more, and I really appreciate that. And I wanted to highlight that because I know that's one of the biggest things that I advocate about, is that, there's many people who come into advocacy from many different angles, not just in child welfare, but many different angles. And when we think of advocacy, there's many different reasons why people do advocate, and I'm a firm believer that, if you're doing it from your heart and you take the time to really educate yourself, you deserve to be respected as such, but that's a different story for another day. Wow. So I have a couple questions within that, because you mentioned a couple of different things. You mentioned, being able to speak at panels, being able to be, I don't want to assume, of a portion of what you said, you were going through school, classes, and life. Well, we know you're going through life, but classes and other things as well. So what part has mental health and self-care played and feel free to be as honest, as open, or whichever you want to be, in this journey of advocacy and doing this work?
For sure. Yeah, that's a big question, but I love it. I would definitely say it's always played a big part. It's always been present. So when I say like when I've worked, 3 years working with young people, I worked with teens, like middle and high schoolers experiencing homelessness with their families. That's not an experience I've had. But I had experienced homelessness in my adulthood for a short time, though I didn't have an address and was legally homeless. I always had a friend's house to stay at. Um, so our experiences were different. But some of the other things they were going through, some of the traumas and just high school struggles of not being focused on school at all. Because how could you, like, for me, that junior to high school, moving 6 times, I wasn't necessarily acting up, but whatever that means, but I was not focused on school. I wasn't doing homework. So just seeing like, that's why I think working with young people, and that's why teens are my favorite age to work with too, because so often they're going through things that I haven't even processed yet sometimes, and especially in those earlier job positions. So I'm literally healing with them. Like, or sometimes I have to pull one to the side because they're dealing with like suicidal ideation, and there's this wisdom or love that just, and patience that pours out of me that sometimes I'm just like, where did that come from? And it helps me. Then I have to go home and sit and think about like, dang, I was spitting. That was some good, some good healing messages in there. Like, so sometimes just learning to take my own advice, like, because I have an endless amount of love for these babies, but I'm just like, wait, let me pour some of that into myself too. And you have to, in these roles and these advocacy positions, you have to take care of yourself, because even if you're just talking about something, on the surface level, in the back of your mind, you could be reliving a whole situation that you went through. And it's like, I've had to learn over and over in so many different ways. You have to fill your own cup. You have to take care of yourself. So whether it was in formal job positions, volunteering, or even in school, like talking about those topics that are race, gender, and class that get really heavy, just learning how to take care of myself and prioritize rest. I had to do a prompt for Casa First of New Mexico's. They were having a panel. Shout out to Veronica. And just kind of having to look at like, what does it look like to be properly compensated for pouring your heart and soul out on a panel and not being paid $25 gift cards for reliving your trauma. So also learning how to
Talk about
advocate for myself, because I do have to, you know what I'm saying? Because listen, I have a big heart, and a lot of us who have been through these systems do, but we also have to get compensated for what we're doing. And a lot of people take advantage of us, especially that 17 to 25-year-old window that they seek out so much, which is a little suspicious sometimes, because I'm like, well, now my brain's developed. Now I've been in therapy. Now I can process in a way that I haven't been able to when I was 22, 21. Like, so also just learning that there is value in the older youth voice, and that my experience is, my formal and informal experience is extremely valuable. And so just asking for my worth too, so that I can have a livable wage and like be able to afford groceries while I'm going to these events and like working, like doing the work and putting in that the secondhand trauma and all this stuff that can come with my passions. While I love it, but just having a friend ask me one time, like, why do you always pick such hard jobs? Like, wait, looking around like, this is hard. But yes, it is. There's days where, yeah, it's hard. So, and then also kind of just like valuing my chosen family that I've gained over the years, which is the biggest blessing of my entire life, that I've had such a big so many opportunities to collect all these people in my life and adopt them emotionally and spiritually, and have such a big chosen family to fall back on, like my birth mom, my now adopted mom, and my friend's mom since the 7th grade who's had my back. Like, so just having all these moms to run to, and just utilizing the people who know my story, who are there for me, and learning how to not, like, how to burden myself on others and not carry loads alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. You touched on a couple different things, and you dropped some nuggets. We not about to just slide past those, because anybody that has been following the Resilient Voices podcast know, like, I'm a person to talk about. One, if advocacy is your profession, this is what you deserve: equity. You deserve to be, paid for that. Like, this is not like, oh, I'm just out here advocating part time. Some people do this as a full time thing. Some
Yeah.
people are public speaking. Some people are training. Some people have put together curriculums and what have you. And to go and do something and you get a gift card when you have put in so much time and preparation into that, it's not only disrespectful, it's devaluing.
It's
And
exploitative. Yeah.
you know,
Let's
you
talk about
know,
it.
and I do want to I want to even highlight even more. You talked about how it is, at times, and I know not everyone has disingenuous hearts when they're doing this, but there's a level to exploitation that happens by targeting individuals who are still within that trauma. Some of them are still institutionalized,
Right.
and they just got out, and different things like that. But also there is a level to it that if you are going to get this percentage, this age range of individuals, you got to get the whole. You can't get the ones that just are, shiny and pretty and speak eloquent. You got to get the people who are, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
You got to show the whole face of it. And that's something that, I advocate about also. It's like, okay, there was a point in time where, I was in that age range, but because, there was a few colorful words, after every other word, I was still advocating, but, because I came from a neighborhood where cussing was just a part of the English language, as anything else, I got passed over,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that you want to have people who are implicitly vulgar, or what have you, but train them, give them that opportunity, because they have a story as well. And that
Yeah.
side of child welfare, that side of foster care, that side of juvenile justice, that side of criminal justice, that side of human trafficking, sex trafficking, that side of homelessness and more, isn't showcased because these certain individuals don't speak as eloquently as the ones who you look a little bit prettier, look a little bit nice, sound a little bit nicer. And that's not everyone's story. Some people are still going through the struggles, but they have a story that's going to touch, if not 15 in that room. And I've seen it, so that's just that, y'all can take it or leave it. You can be mad at me if you want to, but I've seen, some people come in there with a few colorful, words, impact the whole room. And someone that was two, I won't say two put together, only touch probably about 2, 3.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So I just said, like, if you are going to do it, show the whole the whole card deck, the whole face. Don't show the half that looks nice to you, that looks good in a briefing. Looks good on a newsletter or what have you. Show the whole thing, because that's when we start to make true change. When we're able to see the problem as it is. See the different pathologies that lead to the intergenerational trauma, and be able to recognize them at the source and be able to, like, look, I want to help you break this cycle. I want to help you change what is ever next for you.
Yeah.
So I thank you for uplifting that. That was very, very important, and I'm very passionate about it.
Same.
Yeah. You also touched on something that's very key, because a lot of us don't do it. It's work on ourselves for one,
Mm-hmm.
but feel it's okay to work on ourselves while doing the work.
Yeah.
Now,
Right.
I'm a big person. Now, I will say this now, for some individuals, it can be truly painful
Mm-hmm.
to advocate and do the work at the same time. And
Yeah.
my recommendation is do not try to do something that's going to be detrimental in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Take that time, whether it be a month. For me, I took a year. It took a year to really get myself together. I wasn't doing advocacy head on. I don't think I completely stopped advocacy, but I wasn't doing every single thing. Like, there was a period where I was like, yeah, I do this. Yep, I got this. Yep, boom, boom, boom. Like, it was like I was full
Mm-hmm.
time,
Yeah.
but I took a year to really, dedicate and prioritize my self care and mental health, to break through the institutionalization that I had went through, healing from the sexual abuse, and also the unknowing of my own identity, because going through the system and not having a culture to really tie to, but also dealing with, having been sexually violated by both sex, and what does that look like for me?
Let's talk
How,
about it.
but
Yeah.
also growing up, part of, a Kojic Christian church, and being seeing people from that background be abusers. So what
Yeah.
does faith, what does, you know, religion, spirituality look like for me? So I had to do some work.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
had to, because if I didn't do that work, I realized that I can be, even because I'm an advocate, people, when I speak, people listen. And I learned that about myself. I can be damaging, to others, just as well as my words can be helpful and impactful, and start change, and be inspiring to others, because me not doing the work and not healing, that can also spill out in a negative way and have negative impacts, not only on my environment, not only on the people, but in many other areas of my life and others as well. um
Absolutely.
so I had to do that, so I appreciate you highlighting that. you know but yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say anything on that.
No, for sure. That's real. And coming out of the system, just off the many obstacles, like that was like the first question you asked me, were some of those obstacles. It's like, if I hadn't unlearned a lot of those bias working with the youth that I've worked with, because I've worked from everything from like the infant room and a daycare to like the teens experiencing homelessness.
Mhm,
And I've seen what it looks like when staff aren't healed, and it affects the kids negatively. And
mhm,
it's hard because it's something we all have to do, but
mhm,
it's something, it's on the responsibility of the oldest person in the room, the adult in the room, who chose to step into that space of vulnerable
mhm,
youth. And I think that's where I tried to take that really seriously. And um because the last thing I ever want to do is be like that foster mom who, because of the way she was parented me that way, and just like unburdened all these
mhm,
like projections and trauma onto me, or tried to. So that's definitely real. And there's just so many things that aren't talked about. Like, I really appreciate you mentioning that, sharing that vulnerability of like that sexual trauma that happens, especially to Black and brown youth, and Black boys. There were so many ways my brother was failed because of things that he went through,
mhm,
and was never properly kind of taken care of, so that that cycle would break with him, or stop with him, or he wouldn't go into adulthood and continue harm because of the harm that was done to him and
mhm,
ignored. So I'm a huge advocate for that as well. Like, it's really disgusting how often that stuff happens, especially to young, like Black and boys and assigned male at birth people in foster care, and it just gets swept under the rug. And it is hard when it's in that space of this is supposed to be a safe space, but this
Mhm.
is where the hardest stuff that's ever happened to me is happening. So it's also like, yeah, what do you do with that? Because I can relate to that as well. And so,
Mhm.
like I said, finding that chosen family, finding that those safe spaces is everything, but youth have to be given an opportunity to do so. Like, yeah, so that, yeah, that's very real. Yeah.
Definitely. I appreciate you sharing that. First and foremost, it's been a privilege having you on. And just to say that, just appreciate you sharing sharing and also having, vulnerability here in this space, and opening yourself up to myself and also whoever listening out there, whenever.
For sure.
um, yeah, you've touched on so many different things here, and I know that it's imperative um, that we continue going. As advocates, we continue to do the work. We continue to have these conversations. Um, especially surrounding around self-care, surrounding around, taking care of your mental health, whether that looks like you seeing a therapist, whether that looks like you do whatever that looks like, because therapy ain't for everybody, but you
That's
gotta do
true.
something,
That's
you
true.
know, you
Yeah.
gotta do something. Like doing nothing should never be an option.
Yeah.
It,
Therapy
it
is,
is.
yeah.
It is an option, but it should not be one of the choices in that
No.
multiple choice box, for
And
yourself.
yeah, nor do we deserve doing so little. We deserve to
Yeah.
find therapy in music, in concerts,
Mhm.
or going outside, moving your body, however that looks like. Yeah, so there's different forms of therapy. Meditation looks more than one way. You could be meditating, doing the dishes, bumping music. So
Right.
just like learning those different ways that I can find that kind of healing. And for me, yeah, for sure.
Definitely. I have a couple more things to ask, more so
Okay.
statements, what advice would you like to leave here today? You gave us a lot of gems and nuggets already, but if you
Okay.
got some more in there, just to leave us with, feel free to drop the mic on us.
Yes, let me think. Let me think. Well, just kind of like what I was already saying. Um, I guess it's just a little anecdote for the nugget of wisdom that I'd like to leave is um one of the organizations out here that I've been partnering with for some time, they had me come speak for a fundraiser for a previous year. And then that the next year wanted to use just a quote and my photo for the current year's fundraiser, and didn't offer to compensate me, which they always had before. So I was kind of just like, why? And so I texted my adoptive dad because he's great with his nuggets of wisdom. I texted a few like Black women that I know and non-binary people that I know are just like powerhouses in their own areas of life, and was just like, is it fair that I ask for what I deserve? Basically, like, do I ask for money for this photo and quote? Because the quote, like, I was crying, I was pouring my heart out, like the words were so emotional in that moment in that interview that it was a lot of emotional, mental, and spiritual labor.
Mhm.
So I was like, what do I ask for? I ended up asking for, like, I think I lowballed myself still. But my friend is subscribed to this organization's emails. And when the fundraiser wrapped up later that year, she like screenshotted and it was like, oh, we made $185,000 this year thanks to donors. And she was like, because I think I asked for like 350. And she was like, that's why you're asking for 1,000 next year and no less. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So I guess my advice would be, don't lowball yourself. Um, ask for what you deserve and then add tax is probably one of my favorite quotes. I don't know who said it first, but the work that you're doing is labor on so many levels. It's not just the labor of getting in front of a camera or stepping onto a stage for a panel or writing policy in a room that someone's going to see that later someday. like I said, it's mental labor, emotional labor, spiritual labor, like in every sense of the word, it's work. And so work needs to be paid for, especially in a day and age where groceries are $300. So ask for what you
Right.
deserve and rest. Success is rest. So relax, shorten your to-do list, rephrase and reframe the ideas of doing nothing and being unproductive into empowering yourself of like, this is rest. This is powering me up to do what I need to do. This is productive. Rest is productive. So just like kind of shifting your mindsets on those ideas, especially in such a capitalistic society, and take care of yourself, get your money. Yeah.
Man, it's so much in that I'm gonna take away. I definitely am gonna take away, instead of, saying doing nothing, I'm gonna tell people, look, I'm just powering up right now. So I'm gonna
Exactly.
need my time so I can power up, you know. Uh, know,
Absolutely.
right, but also to add to that, as you know, I have this podcast, I do speaking events of traveling and stuff like that. Last year, between the last year and starting this and stuff like that, I had a really hard time, like really asking, similar to your story, like asking people, because I don't do this work for the money, but I also know I got bills to pay.
Mhm.
I like, if I'm going to put myself in this position, to dedicate my time and hard work and effort, I have to, make sure that I'm okay. And I share this because additional to what you just mentioned, I know that there's a lot of advocates still in that mind that I was, that think in the work of servitude,
Yeah.
you don't deserve to be paid justly, but that is completely wrong.
Yeah.
And this is not just in the aspect of foster care advocacy. There's a lot of people out here, doing really great work in many different avenues. It can be, activist work, and all these different, humanitarian things. I just tell you, we live in a day and age where, people are suffering in silence, and you can't be out here doing all this great work but suffering, or taking hits in silence, and it's not okay, because you deserve more, you deserve better, and you'd be surprised, you know if you speak up and be like, look, I would love to continue to do this, but I need to be compensated. You know, I have bills, I have this, some people got kids out here doing that. So like, look, you got
Yes.
priorities,
Yeah.
so as for your money, make sure you are secure, you know, um, and don't lowball yourself, you know, and don't
Mhm.
lowball yourself. Um,
Yeah.
any last comments? And this space is for, you got a rap album, you got a book, you got some bars you want to drop on us real quick, how people can connect with you, how people can, reach out or whichever, feel free to drop it, share it.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Britney Lee. It should come up that I'm in the greater Seattle area. Um, and outside of that, I mean, I hope to be an author soon, so keep an eye out. And any last nuggets? That's the hard one. I don't know. How do I plug myself? um I would just say LinkedIn, talk to me. I'm happy to get coffee with anybody who wants to meet. Happy to talk about being on a panel if you've got one that you are trying to organize. And lastly, just like any career opportunities working with youth, empowering primarily foster youth, youth of color, experiencing or at risk of homelessness, undocumented youth, LGBTQI youth, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm also interested in policy positions, grant writing, and intro level law positions as well. So yeah, hit me up. and we can network and connect. I would be happy to.
And y'all heard it. Look, so look, you just reach out. That LinkedIn is there. I'm gonna tag Britney into the promotional flyer and everything. So ain't no excuse. Ain't no excuse. No. But for real, you guys, it has truly been a pleasure. I got to do my outro. It's still, flu, cold, allergies, COVID, all these different wildfires, all this stuff happening out here, smoke coming down from wildfires, glaciers, they leaking, water's rising, New York sinking, stay safe out here. Long
Please
story short,
drive safe.
stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe
Yes.
out here. Please, be precautious, love your neighbor, check on somebody. And I mean this in the most real and endearing way. We all know somebody who we haven't checked on, and you got that hunch, you got that feeling that they may not be doing okay. Ask them how they doing, and don't ask them how they doing and let them say, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine. Take a few more seconds and dig a little bit deeper.
Mhm.
Don't annoy them. Don't aggravate them. We ain't trying to fight out here. But,
No.
Genuinely ask with an open heart, and be there for somebody. It doesn't even have to be somebody it could be a stranger, be someone, just out there, be safe. But, truly ask them. I don't think we do that enough as individuals. I don't think we do enough to take care of one another. I'm a firm believer. Some people are gonna be mad at me. I feel like, us as a nation is very selfish and self-minded. And I feel like we can do a little bit more to not be that way, and I know that society and different things have happened in history to make us want to be more reserved and protect ourselves. But we also, while doing that, can still share kindness, and I kind of just ask you guys, as you guys listen to this, follow me and listen to the guests that I have on, that you take this in and you share that on, you pay it forward in some way, in some fashion. Also, we touched on a couple things that can be potentially triggering, so I just ask if you listen to this on your way to work, whenever you just take a minute, practice a mindfulness exercise, get yourself back centered, or whatever you need to do. If it's something that, it triggers something in you that you may have experienced, and you trying to figure that out, work through it, feel free to reach out to me. If you want to get connected to some resources in your state and you don't know how to do it, reach out to me anyway. We can figure it out together. If you want music therapy, whatever, I'm down to help people out, because I wish somebody would have done it for me. But nonetheless, we need to get better at help, asking for help. And I know a lot of people don't have individuals they can properly go to. So, we gonna do this all together. So with that being said, I love you guys. I appreciate all your support. This has been a great episode. I've taken a lot from this. I hope you guys have. I hope you guys have a good night, good morning, good whenever you're listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, episode 6. Until next time.